Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the beautiful virtual Charlotte Motor Speedway as we get to go left and right tonight. We're at the Charlotte Roval for this evening's coverage of the Charlotte Roval 125 on LSR TV, your home for sim racing. Justin Prince, Greg Rentz, along with you, Charles Wooden, in the director's seat for what is expected to be a wild race tonight. Greg, glad to have you on with us. First things first, tonight, these drivers are getting ready for a wild one.
Absolutely. If you've watched any of the races at the Roval that NASCAR has put on over the last couple of years, you know how wild this race gets, and it is going to be just another case of it here tonight. These drivers, the Northwest Cup Series, they are here to put on a show tonight. One of the few times they get to go right and left here this evening tonight here at the Charlotte Roval, the newest road course on the NASCAR circuit, and the Northwest Cup Series is here in style, and we have got a full field ready for you here tonight, Justin.
Already 30 drivers have brought their cars to the Charlotte Roval qualifying starting in about a few minutes or so. But let's talk first things first about the wild finish at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Sean Brightsman came out with the checker flag in a 31-car field. Casey Tillman was the pole sitter. It was a race with chills, thrills, spills, and just about everything you could ask for, including 2-3 wide at the finish line to decide the race.
It was a wild race, Justin. I mean, we had 4 or 5 drivers in the mix coming to the checkered flag. Me and you probably went back and watched that finish several times, and I've watched it back a couple more times since then. It was just such an incredible finish, and Sean Brightsman putting himself in the perfect position to be able to capitalize and convert it into that win. It was one of the best races that we've had here on LSR TV in quite some time, and I'm looking forward to seeing how they follow up this one because I know a lot of drivers are going to be hungry to chase a win here at the Roval tonight.
I think everyone's going to be absolutely hungry indeed. This is going to be a crazy stretch of races overall going in towards Memorial Day weekend. There's the Roval, Kansas, Michigan, and then Charlotte's Oval once more to end things off before Memorial Day weekend. Just for the span of May alone, it's going to be entertaining to see how this stretch goes and could be a crucial stretch of the season, Greg, to continue momentum to try and get yourself to the postseason.
Yeah, we're getting into the meat and potatoes here of the season, and these drivers now, they have to start thinking about the playoffs as we close in on them more and more each week, each passing race. We're getting closer to the playoffs, so that thought is going to be growing just a little bit more each and every race as the season wears on. So drivers who maybe back in Daytona, they didn't have the start to the season that they wanted. They're like, it's okay, I got all year to recover. Maybe now they're starting to think about, okay, now we're getting to a point where I have to recover because every race that clicks away is another race closer to the playoffs and another chance for you to get into the playoffs that slips away if you're still on the outside looking in.
Let's discuss a little bit about that championship battle, shall we? Because just 5 drivers have gotten victories this season. Brightsman with 2, Seth Frazier with 2, Dan West Jr., Jeff Stabnow, Corey Walters all have 1. Everybody else is in line to have to battle their way in through points entering tonight. The thing is, the top 10 is separated by just 78 points from the top of the pylon to the end of the top 10, Greg.
So it's a very, very close points battle, and it's just going to keep jostling and jumping throughout the rest of the regular season to try to position each other for the playoffs. So you're going to start seeing guys who are close and knocking on the door but just haven't broken through for that win yet. They're going to really start pushing it and try to get themselves that win to get themselves into the playoffs so they don't have to worry about it as the season wears on, because like we said, the longer it wears on, the less opportunities you have. And Justin, this one you could call a wild card. Not a lot of drivers in this field have a lot of road course experience, and we're seeing it on the speed charts that some of the guys that we normally see near the top, not quite up there as much as we would expect them to see on a normal night because of the fact that they're turning right and left. So this is really your first wild card of the season, and this could really shake up the playoffs even this early in the season.
And remember, this is a fixed setup league, meaning say you feel the suspension's too stiff, you have to adjust your driving style to how that suspension is built up. Some drivers may prefer that looser stiffness on road courses such as this. By the way, that championship picture, Dan West Jr. is currently on top of the board by 39 points over Bryceman, Stabnell, Chris White, and Seth Frazier entering tonight. The times in practice see Jeff Stabnell on top of the pylon with a 119.952. The man in second, though, is your points leader, Dan West Jr.
So Dan West Jr., and he had such a strong run at Texas last week, and it seems like that's been something we're saying on repeat every single day. Dan West Jr., such a strong race through the course of it, and he has been able to put finishes together twice for wins, but has been so close so many times this season, has been far and away the fastest driver on the tour, as I believe he's led the most laps just about every single week, just has not been able to capitalize with the exception of those two that you mentioned, Homestead and Rockingham being those wins. So Dan West Jr., no surprise seeing him up there near the top.
He also has the most top 5s and the most top 10s on the campaign. Now, these drivers have until about 11:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:30 p.m. Pacific Time or so to get to qualifying exactly when it gets to about 5 minutes to go up on the clock on the top window. A couple drivers to keep an eye on as well, I think, Greg, are drivers like Frazier in the Tidricks. We were talking a little bit about some of the road racing experience. You mentioned drivers such as those have ran a lot of them lately.
And we're seeing that on the speed chart with BJ Tidrick, a guy who has been in the Northwest Racing Series but hasn't really been up front a whole lot here this season, but he has spent most of his free time lately running road course races, including several right here at the Roval, and he's on track right now in the Winston 72 car. So he was up near the top 5 of practice times. He actually wound up 6th on the charts in practice. So BJ Tidrick showing that, hey, all this road course experience is going to pay off for me tonight. I feel like this is a shot at a win for myself in the 72 car, and he is really showing it right now. 6th in the charts on practice. He's on track right now in the Mustang sponsored by Winston number 72, and Tidrick, I believe this is his shot to really have a good run here tonight.
Seth Frazier, by the way, currently on top of the pylon with a 122 flat. Just got knocked off the board, though, by Chris White, first driver in qualifying in the 121s. As mentioned, most drivers in practice got to the 120s like Dan West Jr. just did. These drivers have 2 laps to get in their best lap times, and West Jr. really dancing his way around turn number 2 that time. Now, the Roval, though, when it comes to road course racing, is a completely different beast, Greg, because it's an oval, but also a road course at the same time. O'Hare, for example, seeing the difficulties because it's so bouncy here. There's a lot of turtles, and you're carrying a lot of speed on half this racetrack.
And the drivers, some of them are driving it like an oval, especially when they get onto the NASCAR part, which yes, you have to do, but in order to really excel here, you have to treat it as both. Like you mentioned, it's an oval and it's a road course, so we're seeing drivers all over the place struggle. I saw BJ Tidrick lose it over through a section of the track earlier, which I myself had a lot of struggles with when I ran some Mazda MX-5 races here last week. I ran a couple of them here, and there was a section of the track, I'll mention it later on in the broadcast, of where it was that I was struggling, and we're seeing drivers, even drivers with a lot of road course experience, struggle here because of just how much different this is as opposed to a standard road course.
Absolutely. Garrett Huffine stops on the racetrack. He's in one of the Hooters paint schemes tonight. The other one is Casey Tillman. And when it comes to some of the adjustment these drivers have had throughout this session tonight, as we take a look at Tillman specifically, the differences in confidence and skill on the road courses was up to 11 seconds from the top of the board to the bottom of the board at the end of practice. And that was with weather changes included.
So that just shows the extreme amount of experience differences that we have here in the road course section, or road course department, I should say, as some of the drivers who really have spent a lot of time on the sim in these road course races are really showing that they have the speed here, whereas other drivers, maybe this is the first time they've even attempted a road course race. So It really goes to show just how important experience is at a track like this.
Indeed, and remember, this backstretch chicane was added in place of the bus stop before the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series race on the iRacing service back in 2019. In your opinion, what are the best places to pass here at the Charlotte Roval today?
In my experience, I had a lot of success on the backstretch chicane, which that was where I was able to make most of my moves. That was the area that I felt the most comfortable making passes, but a lot of people in my races were making passes at the very first turn, right after the finish line where you dive down into the infield. A lot of drivers were attempting to make passes there, so I'm keeping my eye on those two spots to really be the spots that you can really make some moves here early on in this race.
What about the danger zones, though, when it comes to this racetrack? Because there could be a plenty of them.
Well, for me, I'm not sure the exact terminology for it. If we go to Casey Tillman, he's coming up. He's going through the section right now, which I had the most struggles with. It's the last right-hander before you swoop left onto the oval track. That was the area of the track. I'm sorry that I don't know the exact term for that.
Turn 6.
Area. Turn 6, yeah, but that was the exact spot where I had so many issues. I think I went off track 10 times in my race. I think 8 of them were in turn 6 right there. I just could not figure that turn out to save my life when I was racing in it. So that's a danger zone for me. As far as another danger zone, a lot of drivers struggle with the front stretch chicane, Justin, because you're carrying so much speed through NASCAR turn 3 and 4, and you got to get it slowed down to almost a crawl to make that turn through the front stretch chicane. A lot of drivers had struggles there, not just in the races that I would run in the MX-5, but I saw it a few times in practice also, as drivers would just struggle trying to get that car wound down and would carry too much speed through the front chicane and it would knock them into the wall, or they would carry too much speed and it would shoot them and cut the course because they weren't able to get it slowed down enough.
As you can tell, Casey Tillman not able to put in a time, had off tracks on both of his attempts. Sean Brightsman, meanwhile, was fairly quick in practice. He's trying to put in a flyer of a lap time, one of the last drivers to do so with a few minutes to go in the session. Keep in mind, this is just his first lap. The track temperature at the moment, 86 degrees Fahrenheit, 78 degrees is the air temp. In practice, Greg, it went down from the low to mid-90s in the span of about 15 minutes before qualifying started.
So this is a very, very different track surface than what these drivers were practicing on, and that can help them out with the qualifying times. But when you get so used to driving on a slippery surface like this, to treat it like a slippery surface and to go out and there just be so much more grip because of the cooler track surface, it'll actually slow you down a little bit because you're driving more conservative. And we're seeing a lot of drivers qualify under their practice times because they're playing it a little bit more conservative than they would have liked in a qualifying effort. But one of those that is not the case is Sean Brightsman. He just went to 4th on his first lap.
Look at the top of the board, though.
Yeah, Jeff Stabnow, who was fastest in practice, and he was just about a mirror to his practice lap, about 2/100ths difference between Stabnow's qualifying lap and his practice time. So great consistency here by the 24 of Stabnow.
Yeah, on his second and final lap, Stabnow picked up an extra 0.2 of a second. O'Hare coming across the stripe, right now one of 22 drivers currently official with times. O'Hare looking to make it a 23rd, not able to do so, does not get an official time in. A couple others still circulating around the racetrack for final practice attempts and or their only laps. Chances here for Garrett Huffines, that might be it right there. That is a course cut penalty if you take that turtle too hard into turn 15. That's exactly what just happened to him. No qualifying time for Huffines tonight.
So that's a tough break for Huffines, and he was near the bottom of the charts as far as practice times went, so you knew he was looking for a good lap, but cutting the course right there, even there right at the end. And that was what I talked about. Perhaps you're carrying a little bit too much speed and you just cut the course trying to get it wound down enough to make the corner. That's why the front stretch chicane is just so difficult at this racetrack, and I'm expecting to see quite a bit more of that as time wears on through this race.
20 seconds until qualifying gets underway, but it's looking like in total 22 drivers will get official times in here, Greg. Your keys to how you win a race like this tonight with a lot of unknowns and no caution flags to save you.
You're going to have to start it off by being patient. You're not going to want to push it early. You want to make sure that you know exactly what's going to be around every corner. You want to be familiar with the course. Show some patience in the early going and not push it into an area that you might not be too familiar with and put yourself into trouble. Also, you're going to want to find that happy medium of pushing it and keeping it conservative, because just because it worked one time, this is road course, it doesn't mean it's going to work the next time. It's so different here in one section of the track compared to the other. For example, turn 6 is so much more different than the backstretch chicane. You're going to have to want to find yourself in a rhythm to try to settle things down and try to just click laps off as smooth as you can and keep your incidents to a minimum.
Drivers are now making their way to the starting grid for tonight's action for what should be an exciting one for the Charlotte Roval. Let's take a quick glance at how your starting grid is for tonight's action. On the pole tonight, he owns 2 road course track records in Northwest Racing Series history. The all-time leader in starts, Jeff Stabnow, starts on the pole tonight with a 1:19.938, quicker than in practice. Dan West Jr. and his son, Devin West, starts second and third, with Sean Breisman in fourth. Bill Ross Jr. starts in fifth, with Caden Anderson in the 37 and P number 6. Dylan Huffine starts 7. Chris White, Seth Frazier, John Onnenbacher round out the top 10 grade.
Bruce Lee Weaver going to roll off in the 11th spot. Alongside him, BJ Tidrick in the 72 was looking for a little bit better qualifying time. Will roll off in 12th. David Kaufman, first time back in a while, in the number 38, will start alongside Timothy Ricketts Jr. with Steve Paulson rounding out the top 15. Carl Burke rolls off 16th. To his outside will be Garrett Sisk, the 64. Steve Jennings, Tyler King, Ricky Bozer rounding out the top 20, Justin.
Rest of the starting grid rolls on the screen. In total, 30 drivers ready to go for tonight's action. 22 total drivers with official times, 8 set by provisionals this evening. Once again, 55 laps for tonight's race, 17 turns on this 2.28 mile circuit, 125 miles. All the drivers all set to go. It's a unique start for tonight's race. It's a standing start in the Northwest Cup Series. Engines are fired. Drivers are ready. Green flag waves. We're underway for the Roval.
Standing start so unique here at Roval. Jeff Stabnow able to get going, and one guy who was not anticipating that standing start was Devin West in the 16. He delayed a little bit, which cost him the 3rd spot to allow Sean Breisman to get up into 3rd. So early Stabnow breaking away with Dan West Jr. right behind him. Sean Breisman rounding out the podium here through the first section of corners.
Most of the drivers are already single filing themselves up for the early going. One driver did miss the start, and Scott Hutchinson, starting from the pit lane, will be about 20 seconds back of the rest of the pack. But still plenty of time to try and close up to, say, the front runners for tonight's race. Jeff Stabnow making his way into NASCAR 1, first time onto the oval.
So now the drivers, for the time being, in a track that they are familiar with, the NASCAR surface, but it's only for that turn as Breisman breaks loose in 3rd, because now they got to slow down to make that chicane. And this, I thought, was a spot that we could see a lot of drivers make some moves. And we see it in the back there, Devin West was really able to close in on Sean Breisman there, but Breisman is able to pull away back out of the chicane. So that's what I was talking about there. If you can get a good enough run and feel comfortable making a move, you can make one there in the backstretch chicane. Now they move into the front stretch chicane, and Justin, this one's a lot trickier than the backstretch.
Especially if, say, you're in a position to try and dive underneath somebody. Not the smartest of moves, potentially, if you don't take it right. But Timothy Ricketts Jr. takes it very well. Avoids damaging the car on the Turtles. Actually gains some time on David Kaufman in the 38 machine. Everyone into a good rhythm to start this race off so far. But you have to think about a couple different things when it comes to this track. Maintaining pace, but also maintaining the grip in this race car.
Absolutely. The longer this race goes, it gets slipperier and slipperier. That's a common trend here on iRacing.
Oh, trouble O'Hare. Look at that. O'Hare is stopped in the middle of the racetrack. This is off of turn 1 and 2. Was in 21st. Ended up spinning on his own coming out of the Tums Hartburn turn. Ended up clipping the outside wall, trying to keep the car straight. Ended up crushing in the front nose as well, and off behind the much of the pack he now is. By the way, second has changed hands. Dan West Jr. lost 2 positions in the span of that 20-second sentence.
So there we see right here, the Roval is going to be a game of preservation and making sure you're in position to capitalize on someone else's mistakes. As Sean Brightsman and Devin West were both able to get around Devin's father, Dan, and Caden Anderson falling into the clutches now of Chris White as he was trying to make a move at Dan West Jr. Just messed up the chicane just a hair going there through and lost all that ground to West Jr. and fell back to Chris White. Anderson has since been able to pull back away, but there we see it. If you make one slight mistake, it can cost you so much here on road course racing.
Indeed, as right now Brightsman able to pull a little bit from Devin West, but Sean Brightsman trying so hard to keep up with Stabno.
Caden Anderson caught a turtle and lost more than one spot here. He has lost so far 3 as Dylan Huffines is the third and final car to get past him. He caught the turtle coming off, I believe, turn 4 and spun sideways, was able to save it, but he lost 3 spots there.
Good job to keep himself off the right side wall on the racetrack, however, really buzzed the tires, and tire fall off can be big here at this racetrack. Depending on your strategy, could see as much as a couple seconds of fall off. Trouble in front of them. Off the track, Chris White really locked it up, keeping off of Dan West Jr. in the chicane.
You see Chris White, he slows up and has to cut the chicane, and I believe he had to slow down to give a little bit of time back, which cost the spot to Bill Ross Jr. Dylan Huffines was able to capitalize and get up past him as well. Now Anderson gets him trying to get around him in the front stretch chicane. Here comes BJ Tindrick, who, by the way, started 12th, is up to now to 9th as he makes that pass on the 83 of Chris White, now 8th rather, so BJ Tindrick will be in the 8th position, and Tindrick, remember, he's one of those guys I said keep an eye
hard
on.
hit.
Wow, Seth Frazier, he just clobbered the wall there.
That is a massive hit to the concrete wall for Seth Frazier out of turn number 2, and that might be a concern. Looks like he's down a little bit on speed. The whole right side is crushed in on that car.
Trying to get around Ottenbacher, he bobbled and it just shot him into the wall. He overcorrected and just pounded the wall right front first. And we've mentioned it, how a lot of damage at this, or on this 32 car, and on this track like this, that is going to be a long day for the 32 car. And that's such a shame because he was one of those guys we talked about in the pre-race who had done a lot of road course racing to prepare for this very race. So to have something happen like that early, definitely got to be tough for the 32.
Remember, they do have a fast repair available for when these drivers have to come down for pit stops. However, that's a long ways away. In fact, Jeff Stabnow said it himself in a conversation before this race. The leader didn't even want to use one of them at all, and that's something all drivers strive for, is you don't want to depend on the fast repair.
Justin, about how long do you expect a run to be? There's no full course cautions here tonight on local yellows, so yeah, obviously it's going to be a fuel run for a pit stop. How long do you anticipate that being?
And big crash meanwhile. Seth Frazier collects multiple drivers. He tried to pass Ottenbacher, and now West gets hit. Check that, that's Tyler Kane in the 44, but either way, a massive stack up, collecting 4 or 5 different drivers.
Same area that Frazier had the problems with the previous time through, so something not working on the 32 car in that area, and that just caused the bottleneck. Tyler King getting involved. You see Timothy Ricketts, Bruce Lee Weaver, and others. That is definitely a big one, and Seth Frazier not having the day he wanted to have. He was so looking forward to this race.
Yeah, King now with some left side damage. Ottenbacher, his front nose isn't even sealed. That's going to have a lot of air going underneath the green LSR TV machine's nose. And keep in mind, Ottenbacher trying to gain some momentum. Comes into ninth in the top 10 in points, yes, but just 2 top 10s to his name on the campaign.
So Ottenbacher caught up in that one, trying to get back up there, but definitely not the way he wanted this one to start, getting collected in an incident like that.
See if we can get in there to look here on the LSR TV replay, and he got the pass done, just couldn't hold the grip.
That same spot about 30-40 feet before where it happened in the previous lap where he smashed the wall with the right front. So Frazier, that area right now seems to be the early spot where it could be make or break. And that was one of the areas I mentioned that we were going to see a lot of guys trying to make passes. It was that turn right there, which I thought could be a really good passing zone if you time it right. Frazier was able to time it right, just couldn't hold the car together through that final turn into the second turn.
Indeed. By the way, already 5 drivers in the pit lane with damage so far. 7 total have already had to come down for one fast repair, and we're just coming to the end of lap 6 this time by for these drivers. To get back to that conversation, though, on the strategy game, Greg, there's 2 options. You can go for the 2-stopper and say pit at laps 18:36, or you can split it up the middle. But there is that major risk of losing an extra 1 to 2 seconds a lap trying to stretch it to a 1-stopper, Greg.
Well, we know that there's not going to be any full course yellows tonight, so that concern goes out the window. But like you mentioned, the fall off is going to be so great later in the run. So I'm curious to see how many guys will try to make it a 1-stopper, if any, because to me, this is a two-stop race. I'm thinking lap 18 and lap 36 to try to have as much grip left on the tires as I can and have enough life left in the tires for that final push. If I'm myself driving, I'm making it a 2-stop race, but that's just me. We'll see if anyone tries at the 1-stopper.
Cars you're currently looking at are the drivers battling for about 16th, 17th or so on back. Bruce Lee Weaver leading this group. Roy Grande in 18th, Gary Nichols in 19th. Grande's already gained 9 positions from the drop of the green flag. He's your biggest mover of the race so far.
So Roy Grande making moves here in this one in the early stages. Here on lap number 7. Trying to get up and crack into the top 15. Remember, he had such a strong run a couple of weeks ago. I believe it was the Truck Series that he was able to finish second at Bristol. So he's been looking to build on that, and possibly a night here tonight that he can capitalize if he keeps going the way he's going. It could be a pretty solid night for Roy Grande.
Trouble for Frank Harris, by the way. This is as the leaders are going out, and this could be a tricky one because this is right where drivers are trying to go full speed for the second part of the apex in turns 3 and 4. Finally gets going, but had to be careful about it. You can see the positions of the track map. You can't just get yourself back on the racetrack and rejoin when there's a cluster of cars. That spells trouble. You have to find those holes on the track map.
So it's very tricky if you get yourself in a position to really get yourself recovered. On a normal day, it's just like, okay, just get back on track. Not in this case. Like you mentioned, you got to find the hole on the track map to get yourself back out there. And that could cost you even more time than, say, just your simple spin or something like that.
By the way, just as we're discussing that, Frank Harris, you may have seen him stop on that mini-map for a second. He took the wrong turn. Yes. Took the access road off turn 7 and nearly went off the other direction. Here's what happened to cause this for Harris. It took him about 20 seconds to get back going after clipping some of the grass on the right side of the track, as well as some of the turtles. But keep in mind, once he got back going, there's an access road off of turn 7 that's used for safety vehicles. Once he got back going, he nearly took that and went back to retake turn 2.
And that could have been a disaster for him had he not realized what happened. So Harris, lucky that it didn't end worse for him there.
Yeah, you're going to see this coming out of turns 5 and turn number 6. Looking pretty decent once he got back up to speed, getting himself a rhythm. Then right about here, sees an opening on the right side, and that's the wrong way. Cost him a few seconds or so on the racetrack. So interesting sequence for Harris, to say the least. By the way, fastest car on the track now is Sean Breitzman, who does have some damage on the 46. Here's a look at the LSRT replay, though. See what just happened to him.
Well, something else just happened to the 46. He missed the chicane and had to slow down as we were watching on the replay. And Breitzman, I noticed his damage. I'm not sure where it was from, as it looked like it may have been early on in the race, but Breitzman missed the chicane, so he just lost even more time to Stabnow, and Devin West was able to close back up. So Breitzman, and just that one little slip up in the chicane cost him a 1.5 seconds on the charts right now.
Fell to a 124 flat. Actually nearly scraped the outside wall through turns 1 and 2. You just seen. One thing to note, that damage on that Toyota Camry did come for the first lap, Greg. And how important do you think, or how much of a factor do you think that will be as this run continues until we can pit?
Honestly, the longer this run goes, I think the more and more effect it will have. He's able to maintain pace right now, but I'm not so sure he will be able to maintain the pace that he's keeping for the time being right now. He's able to pull back away from Devin West, but the longer and longer it goes, it's going to be harder and harder on him. And remember, with this race or track being so long and pit stops being so far away, there's always opportunity for more damage to arise if something else goes wrong for the 46 cars. So while it's a little bit of a scrape up right now, the longer and longer it goes, the worse and worse I believe it'll get. So Breitzman no doubt is going to want to get that fixed as soon as he comes to pit road.
Indeed. Steve Jennings, by the way, under heavy pressure for 14th. Trying to poke his way around is Timothy Ricketts Jr. Good run coming out of the chicane. Might have been a slowdown for Jennings. Actually gives him the spot. Move Ricketts up to 14th position. Remember, was one of the drivers around that stack up, and trouble for one of the Wests. One of the Wests has just been involved in an incident. It's Dan West Jr.
And set quite a bit of damage on the 55 car.
Absolutely launched against the Turtles, Greg, in the backstretch chicane.
Oh, he got big air there in the 55 and had to come to a complete stop to settle it down. And he's lucky there's honestly not more damage to the 55. And we'll see how it affects the car moving forward, at least so he can get to pit road. But that could be a game changer for the 55 if he isn't able to get to pit road soon.
Remember, drivers may be looking towards the pit lane fairly soon for tonight's race as they continue to flow on through. Currently, this is BJ Chidrick in 9th. Caden Anderson, who's been having some impressive past couple weeks at that Harvest Chevrolet, looking to find his way back up to the position. Lost a couple spots after he missed one of the shifts and went off towards the grass out of turn 4 a few laps ago. Looking like he's being smart right now, picking his spots.
Well, Caden Anderson, I've been talking to him for a while now. Like, me and him have been conversing as we race through other forms in iRacing, and he mentioned that he doesn't really like road courses. He mentioned when we raced in the iRacing Northwest Tour, the Super Late Model Series that we run, when we did our road course doubleheader, he was not a fan of road course racing, and he was not spending a lot of time practicing it, but it seems like he's doing pretty good in the 37 car, so he may have found some time to really try to figure out the Roval at least. But I know when I talked to him about the subject last, Anderson was not a fan of road course racing.
Interesting. He is 40th in the points, by the way. Just his 3rd start of the season, though. And has been one of those drivers who has been really good on long runs. Problem is, right here is his worst section, where that's where he lost a lot of time before, Greg.
Yeah, it was coming off of turn 4, that right-hander before that straightaway. And this right here, turn 6, is another problem area that I've noticed quite a few guys have had issues with. Anderson seems to have a good grip on that one, though. And no, I'm wondering right now if he's content to kind of just follow BJ Tidrick, knowing how much road course experience BJ Tidrick has over the last few months, racing in just various different road course series. I wonder if Anderson is just trying to follow him and try to learn where he's hitting the brakes, what his braking zones are, his turning zones, opportunities for him to capitalize. I'm wondering if Anderson right now is just going to school, trying to study what the 72 is doing.
Very nice and composed in this race in the battle for 8th position. Right now, these drivers are running about 2 seconds off the pace to Jeff Stabnow, should note. By the way, Stabnow, he's in a ton of traffic. Lap traffic management might be crucial tonight because it can cost you about a second or so if you reach them in the wrong spots. Or they can just go in the grass like that.
All depends just on where you catch him in the racing surface. Stabnow was able to get through relatively clean there, but on the NASCAR turn 1 now, and Stabnow is just so strong through that particular area, and we're seeing it right now. Stabnow clearly has put in, I believe, more time than anybody here at this track, because he is just light years ahead of everybody else, it appears.
Corey Walters was the car you seen go off the track, by the way, and reason he just had to use the toe after he gone into the grass. There is an extra little couple S's here at the road course that were considered for the original Roval layout. He found out there's a concrete barrier that doesn't allow you to take that as a shortcut back on the racetrack, and now he's back in the pit lane and joins the many who have already had to either get damage repair done and or take a tow truck, while Stabnow leads by 5.5 seconds.
So a tough break there for Walters in the 9, and this track, like we mentioned.
Oh, trouble for Devin West now. Devin West has now had trouble, and this has been a trouble spot for both the Wests tonight. Call it the Rocket Place. That time not as big of a launch, but still absolutely blew the corner in the backstretch chicane.
So both Wests having issues in the backstretch chicane here, Justin. And we talked about it in the pre-race. I thought that was a spot that you might be able to make some passes, but so far that seems to be more of kind of a trap, if you will, and really give these drivers some headaches here in the early stages.
I mean, when you think to the Real World Cup race, Bubba Wallace and his battles with Alex Bowman and a few other drivers in those mixes of races, a couple other drivers were scrapping and that part of the bus stop and the chicane all throughout the Real World race. And one more driver going to have to get back up to speed. Slowdown penalty, that's Gary Nichols, who just missed the final chicane.
Well, someone else had problems in the backstretch chicane. It was Stephen O'Hare in the 41, and that happened right in front of our leader, the 24 of Stabnow. He caught the barrier trying to turn out of the chicane, and it launched him, and he had to slow up, and that caused Stabnow to slow down because Stabnow was coming with a full head of steam through the chicane. O'Hare had to chase it down to the apron. Stabnow was able to get through, but that cost Stabnow quite a bit of time as Bryson was able to shave almost a second off because of that.
Gap is still 4.6 seconds, and curious to see what that would have looked like for Stabnow, especially with how crazy this race has been in terms of some of the attrition at some points tonight. We've had people take shortcuts. We've had people find ways to turn into rockets with their cup cars. This is what happened, meanwhile, with Stabnow as he tried to get around O'Hare on the replay, Greg.
Yeah, he comes through the chicane, and right as they turn right to try to come out, O'Hare catches it, and it kind of launches him off to the side, and Stabnow just has to back up to make sure he doesn't run him over.
Yeah, you see Stabnow running forward, and right there, O'Hare clips the left side safer barrier. And Stabnow just has to make sure that car doesn't launch right across the racetrack before he gets back on the gas and onto the loud pedal. Off and away went the leader safely. By the way, scrap is on for P number 3, Dylan Huffines, saying hello to Devin West.
Dylan Huffines able to get around West in the Northwest Racing Boys Ford Mustang here tonight. Dylan Huffines, he's been another one who's been turning quite a few laps, I've noticed. He was middle of the pack in practice. This puts him up in the 3rd spot, so Huffines having a pretty solid run in the 5 car. Stabnow, by the way, was able to open up another second on Bryson. It's back up to 5.5 seconds. However, it's about 9 seconds between Breitzman and Huffines right now, 2nd and 3rd. So Huffines was able to get around Devin West, who may be experiencing some after effects of when he launched on the backstretch chicane a few laps ago.
What are your thoughts on how the Northwest Racing Boys have done so far as an organization? We talked about this in one of the Truck Series races. One of their first times on the road courses tonight, Greg.
I'm liking what I see out of them. They're spending a lot of time in the practice rooms trying to figure out how to drive these tracks. And a guy who is really helping with that, he's not in the race right now. He will be back in the mix next week at Kansas. It's Travis Barnes in the 3, serving a 3-race suspension for some incidents at Bristol. This, of course, is race number 3 of 3 in the Cup Series. There's still one more race to go. That is the truck race right back here at the Roval on Thursday. But Travis Barnes, he's really been the one who's been testing out the setups. Dylan Huffines has been the one making the setups. Barnes has been the one going out and fine-tuning it and finding the speed and transferring it to Hoffines, and it's really been helping.
Of course, the Truck Series has open setups, fixed series for the Cup Series, for reference sake, as we take a look once more at Bruce Lee Weaver. The reason this is a factor for some of the cars, he's one of the next drivers that Sean Brightsman is set to lap here, and he's trying to keep positions while trying to stay on the racetrack, nearly hooked into the right side fencing.
Trouble there.
Oh, and he's off into the grass. Into the tire barrier goes Bruce Lee Weaver. O'Hare follows suit. Those two Ford Mustangs having a rough go with things, as here comes some more leaders. This is going to break up the battle for third a bit.
So the car is right there, and that was turn 6. That was the area that I mentioned that I had struggles with, and it was exactly what Bruce Lee Weaver did, just kind of shooting off on exit there in front of the rest of the field. And you see how much time it cost him, as Brightsman was behind those guys when that happened. By the time Weaver got back out on the track, third and fourth had already gotten around him, and they were now 6 seconds back from Brightsman.
One car has elected to park it out of that grouping. Bruce Lee Weaver completely missed the backstretch chicane and completely stopped it. Put the car in the tow truck and said, it's time to go home. Put the car in the trailer. He's done. But the leader really dealing with old tires, nearly said hello to the left side wall.
So we'll see how this unfolds. Bruce Lee Weaver, our first driver to not finish here tonight. The stab now continues to pour it on. He's now 6.3 seconds ahead of Brightsman. And Justin, you mentioned you could make it a two-stopper by 18 and 36. We are at lap 18, so for your two-stop window, it is just now opened.
We'll see if anyone elects to take the two-stop. We did have Frank Harris come down the pit lane. He was down the running a little bit, but Brightsman still in the thick of things for traffic. Has to get by one of the Tidricks. Then you have a couple more drivers up the road, and then some clean space for the first time in about 5-10 laps. The 45 actually missed part of the backstretch chicane and will just yeet his way to the left side of the racetrack and onto the apron. Now, curious to see if Stabnow tries to go for that one stopper, because you can make it a fair amount on the fuel to around 28-ish laps or so.
We'll see how he elects to do it. Stays out this time, comes to the front stretch chicane. That 24 just looks so smooth through various forms or various areas of the racetrack. It doesn't look like he really has a weak spot. And that's so important in the later stages of the race. If you can get a big enough lead, you can really not worry about it out back. You can just focus on hitting your marks and making sure you don't make any mistakes later on in the race. And with how strong that 24 has been so far, it's got to feel good for him, knowing that he has such a strong race car and he has quite a lead built up on Sean Brightsman. And really, the only thing I think that can affect the Stabnow is if something out of his control was to happen.
The funny thing is, and before some of the races this season, Jeff Stabnow checks in with our director, Charles Wooden, and I as we prepare for the race. And one of the things he said is he felt he wasn't good at road courses and felt like he might get into trouble. Funny thing is, each and every time he said that before a race, Greg, he's won it and or dominated it much of the night. Guess what? He's the quickest car on the racetrack.
And he's 6.2 seconds ahead of Sean Brightsman in the 46. So that just goes to show that maybe Stabnow is a lot better at road course racing than he thinks, or that he's letting on.
I mean, he does have the Truck Series records for Canadian Tire Motorsport Park in the series, as well as the Roval, in fact, in that history. So he is quick when it comes to the road courses in terms of those two tracks, which are the two that are in the history books for the overall history of the Northwest Racing Series.
So Stabnow knows how to wheel it here on the road course, and he just opened up another second that lap on Sean Brightsman. It's now 7.4 seconds. So honestly, Justin, gets the tire fall off, but the longer this run goes, it almost seems the faster the 24 seems to get.
Should note, one driver did come down for that two-stop strategy, David Kaufman, who is now 18th position. He's back on the racetrack already, so we'll have to keep an eye on if some of the other drivers elect to try and split this up. This is around that window to do so, and more trouble for Harris. Off along the colored pavement this time, and slowing down along the grass.
So not the night Frank Harris wanted for sure in the number 11 cars. It has been a struggle for him. He's 3 laps down right now in the 11. Still up 6 positions from where he started. Remember, he was one of those drivers who took a provisional to start this race, did not get a qualifying time. Started
trouble for Devin West. Another trouble issue for the West. In the backstretch chicane, this time he actually went across the turtles and lost a ton of time. Bill Ross Jr. now within range to strike for a pass. Will West come into pit? No, but Breitzman did.
So Sean Breitzman pulls in on lap number 20. For reference, Devin West at the last time across the strike was 5 seconds ahead of Bill Ross Jr. The gap now less than a second. So he lost 4 seconds there on track as Dylan Huffines moves into the second spot with Breitzman on pit road. And West was about a second behind. Wow, the 38, I'm sorry, almost took the nose off of the 16 of West right there. Boy, hair-raising moment there as David Kaufman, who is on the 2-stop strategy, came down in front of West and almost took the nose off of him.
There is a massive amount of fall off for these drivers. More than 3.5 seconds, Greg, is the amount of fall for these cars at the moment. That is some of the biggest fall off I think we've seen at the Roval in a while. But remember, this is one of the first times the series has been at the Roval in 2020 with the updated tire model that puts pressure on tire heating and conditioning.
So we'll see how these drivers treat that. The 3.5 second fall off that you mentioned there, Justin, it's just going to get worse and worse the longer these drivers go. So I'm wondering if that's going to play a strategy. Oh, Dylan Huffines just missed the front stretch chicane.
Big mistake for Huffines, but bigger trouble for the complexions of the race. Roy Grande has crashed in 15th, and Jeff Stabnow had a massive technical issue where he disappeared for a good 20 seconds. Luckily, stays on the racetrack multiple times, Greg. We've seen if someone goes pop and disappears off the circuit for that length, they're usually out of contention for the race win. Stabnow just had the luck of the day.
Jeff Stabnow is thanking his lucky stars right now that that didn't turn out worse. And what a heartbreak it would be for Stabnow to have something like that and such a strong run.
Looks like things are settling down, unless you're down the pit lane where the pit crews are very active. Chris White off and away off the jacks for tires and fuel for the Amsoil Interstate Synthetics machine. As many drivers are taking that 2-stop call this race, so is BJ Tidrick. He's now 13th position on the racetrack.
And remember, he's one of those guys who we mentioned were getting a lot of time at road courses, and especially this particular racetrack in various cars over the last few weeks. So Tidrick on the 1-stop strategy right now. Justin, 14 cars currently being scored on the lead lap here as we start this round of pit stops.
And that's going to shrink as well. The more Stabnow stays out and the more cars elect to shuffle on in. Currently, the highest running driver who has pit has been Breitzman. And there goes West Jr. in for his scheduled service in the 55. Curious to see if he elects to use the fast repair. Remember, took a massive hit to that right front fender by launching off one of the turtles about 10-15 laps ago.
And that was the first of a couple different instances in that same exact spot for West Family Racing that has had an issue here. So Dan West Jr., I've been waiting for him to make this pit stop and see how he handles it on pit road, giving up, I believe he was in the 5th position when he pulled in.
And looks like that car up onto the jacks did not use the fast repair, so West Jr. electing to save it just in case. And from what we've seen so far, where a couple drivers had critical incidents, which they have to use tow trucks, might be a smart call just in case something happens during the second stint.
Might not be a bad idea here to save that fast repair. Like you mentioned, there's been so much going on, and there's so many areas that you can find yourself in room for error that it's almost it's almost worth it to save it up until the very end unless you absolutely positively have to. You would almost want to save it just in case something drastic were to happen.
His son has been able to keep the car in more cleaner shape so far in the Effective Web Solutions machine, as he's now down the pit lane. Your thoughts on Devin West? His fourth start of the season. He's been a front runner in a lot of the races he's been a part of. One top 5, one top 10 this year.
And a win in the trucks at Homestead, in which his father won the Cup Series race. So I've been very impressed with Devin West. He is a dirt modified racer here in Washington. His pavement experience as far as racing in the real world comes from Legend cars. He ran Legends for a few years here, was one of the top dogs in the Northwest. In fact, at one point was the top dog in Legends in the Northwest. So the West family know more for their dirt racing, but I've been very impressed with Devin West. A lot of us didn't even know he was on the iRacing service until he started showing up in these races, and he just showed up and has been competitive right out of the get-go. And here we are seeing it once again, up in the top 5, up as high as 3rd here today. Devin West showing that he is good at all forms of racing right now, and he's showing that he can be a very, very competitive driver in this series as time goes on.
Has absolutely impressed me indeed so far as this campaign has progressed in both the trucks and the Cup cars. Stabno, though, he's in line for the one stopper, looking like he's trying to get to the halfway point. That's in about, give or take, 3 or 4 laps or so. Still has a 12-second advantage over Dylan Huffines at the moment. Did lose some time throughout this lap, but Huffines has a good gap to Bill Ross Jr. Here's the gamble, though, Greg, with trying this. Once you come down the pit lane, you're going to lose a lot of time, yes, but it's going to be hard to defend once everyone comes down for the second stops of the race.
Yeah, that was why I was worried about the one-stop strategy. Yes, you're going to be in good position here in about 5 or 6 laps when you make your stop, but like you mentioned, the fall off is going to be so great. You mentioned it before those pit stops started. 3.5-second fall off from the start of the race, and I'm not so sure late in the going, if you're on the one-stop strategy, that you'll be able to hold off those guys who are on that 2-stop strategy. I'd be really worried about making a one-stop call here.
Absolutely. And an interesting thing to note, some of the veterans of this series, such as James Viting, watching along tonight as these drivers make their way around the road course. Keep in mind the turtles could cause some massive damage to, say, the toes, and that's where that discussion came in on where the damage can factor in with some of these hits to that curbing tonight. He mentioned specifically the toe, for example, on one of his trucks went from about 16 to 32 positive to near flat, just from one hit to the right front at Atlanta. That could happen with this fixed setup for these turtles.
So we'll see how it all unfolds. And we saw the damage that Stabnow had from hitting the chicane earlier on and how much it slowed him down. And remember, he elected not to use the fast repair, so that damage still could be there. Depends on how much he was able to get done on the pit road, if any at all. So we're seeing it with these drivers. They do have damage out there, and we're seeing the effect that it's having as the race wears on longer and longer, and the longer these drivers are out there with that damage from the chicanes and the turtles and all that, the longer and longer it goes, the more and more that's going to cost them in the long run.
Anderson is in the pit lane, as you see on your screen right now. Did not use his fast repair either. 30 laps to go, coming to 29, and this is one of the more interesting pit exits, you have to say, though, with this racetrack, because it's essentially a 90-degree turn, then you mash the gas to try and get up to speed and enter right in towards the racing line into turn 3 and 4, as there's the difference in tires as well. Sean Brightsman nearly ran over the back end of Bill Ross Jr. out of the chicane.
Remember, Brightsman is on 4 fresh tires. The top 3 have not pitted yet, so you're seeing it right there, the difference between fresh tires and old tires. And Justin, it's lap 27 now. How long do you think until the guys who have not pitted yet, Stabnow, Huffines, and Ross, make that left turn on the pit road?
Well, remember, the halfway point of this race, Greg, is just in 1 lap for these cars. Halfway this time by, 28 laps down, next time by, 28 to go. So that's when I think we'll start to see those drivers duck down, because Stabnow, Huffines, Bill Ross Jr., along with Chris White and Steve Paulson. Or should I say, Stephen Paulson is a part of the two-stop, Chris White is not. Those drivers right now, Greg, are in that window to try and hit in the next few laps or so because they're at the edge of the fuel tanks, while Breitzman can go to up to about, say, lap 40 or 45-ish.
Well, as Stabnow pulls down on the pit road, one more quick question about that. You mentioned the fuel window, pitting here at the exact halfway point, lap 28. Do you think they can make it from here? So they would be able to, or would it be close?
This is a strategy that's used in official races, Greg, especially when it comes to NIS, because the NIS actually has the same distance, 55 laps. Same distance, give or take, to what the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series had when they came to the Roval last year. Most drivers that race in the pro side went for the two-stopper, but some tried the gamble with a one-stopper, and for some it worked. You have to be good for it to execute properly, though, Greg.
So we'll see how it all unfolds. Stabnow on pit road right now. Huffines stayed out, so Dylan Huffines did not pit, so he's going to try to go an extra lap here on this set of tires and this fuel run. So interesting move by Huffines to not pit there with Stabnow. So if you're Dylan Huffines, what's the maximum amount you can go before you absolutely have to pull in? What's the maximum you can go on the tank of fuel here?
About 32-ish, give or take, based on experience. But these drivers, remember, one of the main differences from what they may have experienced in 2019 too, Greg, is on the road courses this year in real life and on the virtual world, they have lower downforce once again. Remember, it was high downforce where you were able to carry a little more throttle time, might be able to save a little extra fuel by trying to get off the gas more. By the way, Stephen Paulson came in as well. This time by is now in for service. And so is Huffines. He's coming in this time at the other end of the lane.
Huffines pits from the lead. Did not lead the lap as Stabnow was so far ahead of him when he pulled in that he was able to cross the finish line on pit road, still in the lead. And I don't believe Huffines will be able to this time. No, Breitzman crosses the track before, so Huffines stays out the extra lap and still not able to lead the lap as Breitzman was able to get around him on those fresher tires. So honestly, if you're Huffines, the gamble, I wouldn't say it paid off there.
Yeah, it's a massive risk for when the second set of pit stops come down. Sean Breitzman is the leader, though, for the time being. There is a 7-lap difference in the stints, and remember, Breitzman is not in the fuel window to make it to the checker flag at the moment, so he will have to sacrifice that lead eventually. It's just a matter of when. Stabnow currently 8 seconds back, as you see on the left side of your pylon right now.
Breitzman on the two-stop strategy. You mentioned for the window to open up for the second stop around lap 36 or so. Breitzman stayed out until I believe it was lap 20.
Oh, look at this. This just lost a ton of time for Stabnow as we were finishing up that point here, Greg. He had his first mistake of the race, a spin to the access road in turn 7. And that could be huge, Greg, because that lost him 8+ seconds alone.
That is massive for the 24 of Stabnow. The first mistake all day long for that 24. We'll see how much time it costs him at the strike, as Breitzman has already crossed the strike and is off well into the infield now. Jeff Stabnow is just now crossing the start-finish line. The gap went from 9 seconds to 17 seconds. So, like you mentioned, 8 seconds lost between Stabnow and Breitzman. And yes, Stabnow has fresher tires, but with that slide now, he just used up quite a bit more than he would have.
Lost 9 seconds exactly as he takes the corner a bit wider in turn 3 and 4. But you say things about strikes. You talked about the backstretch chicane. Might have to take a look at this one because Dylan Huffines, about a half a lap ago, sent a dive bomb from 6 car lengths back down the back straightaway, completely missed the corner, went across the stripes, and had to serve a time penalty in the battle with Devin West for 3rd position. That might have been noticed on the side pylon as that was going on with Stabnow and his spin.
So that's just the product of what we talked about, trying to time it correctly, and like you mentioned, taking risk. Oh, Dylan Huffines catching the apron of NASCAR turn 2 there. And yes, this is a road course, but you still have the characteristics of the big track here, and catching the apron is still going to do exactly what it does on a normal race such as the Coke 600. He caught the apron in turn 2, and it did exactly what it would do on a normal race and cost him even more time.
Caden Anderson has also had to take a tow truck as well, as he's now back in the pit lane after he made a mistake his last time by around the speedway, after he completely turned dead right down an access road out of turn number 2 and stopped and pulled to the side of the road. So all of a sudden, just when things start to calm down, things go a little crazy. Take a look at the replay here, though, as this is the crazy dive bomb we were talking about, and you were expecting some of this to happen, Greg, eventually down the backstretch. Just may have been ambitious.
Yeah, just trying to get an extra spot and try to get back out in front of Devin West, and just getting a little bit too antsy there, I believe, Justin is. It's still far enough out. You've got 24 laps to go, still 26 at the time of this, so still plenty of time left. I think it's still too early to be making a move that wide or that big at this stage of the race.
Yeah, that is definitely a course-cutting penalty as John Ottenbacher comes in. He's now in for service, and believe he may have been the longest driver to stretch through fuel, and boom, brand new race car, uses his fast repair. So that's the longest anyone's gone on the fuel tank, about 32 laps on the tank tonight.
So Ottenbacher, you mentioned 32 laps you thought was the maximum amount they could go, and he was able to do it, so it can be done. We'll see how it goes. Remember, though, he spent much of that with damage from that incident with Frazier in the early going. That damage was from very early on in the night, so we'll see how he can do with the fresh car, but no doubt he can make it to the end now, Justin.
Battle for third position, though, is on Dylan Huffines. He's reeled back in west. They have about a 5-lap difference in their pit stop cycles. Last time by, Huffines recovered from that lockup you've seen on the replay to have the fastest lap of the racetrack this past time by. Big hit, though, to the right side wall. Nearly takes out the caution light, and that is the second time he's taken a huge lift to the right side of the car tonight.
And you can see the sheer amount of damage to the right side of the 5 of Huffines, especially at the rear of the car. That number 5 car is crumpled up, and we'll see how it affects him moving forward. He has 9 seconds to the bank to himself and Dan West Jr., who, remember, is also driving a damaged race car, as he has not used the fast repair yet either. So Dylan Huffines, 24 seconds back in the leader, Brightsman, and that's just going to keep growing now. He was one of the faster cars out there, and he is going to pull directly on the pit road to use that fast repair.
So Huffines quickly knocked off his normal strategy, and the pit stop delta has been about 40 seconds down the lane, about an extra 5 seconds to get going once you get back onto the racetrack. This is going to lose him a ton of time, potentially could fall back as deep as the end of the top 10 because of that mistake. Just 12 drivers, by the way, give or take, are on the lead lap. Check that 9 as you see on the side pylon. 1 minute 18 seconds separating the drivers on the lead lap. Paulison is the last car on that cycle.
And Huffines makes it back out on pit road after using the fast repair in 8th position, or actually 7th position, as Bill Ross Jr. was the final car to get past him. He was running 7th, now up in 6th. So Huffines going from 4th to 7th after using the fast repair, right behind Ross and White. The battle for 5th now on the track. Breaking out, Huffines is right behind them, so we'll see if he's able to get back up. Didn't lose as much time as we thought he might have, but still cost him quite a bit of ground.
And this is what I love about road course racing here, Greg, because there are so many different strategies that come into play. A lot of times on the oval side of things, you can have fairly simple strategies. Not the best word, I take that back. More so, fairly similar strategies is the word I'm trying to say, Greg. But on the road course, you can have things shake up the order. So many different tire cycle lives. So many drivers trying to undercut one another. That makes the road course racing so unique and a fan favorite, such as tonight.
Yeah, it makes it so unpredictable also. and it just opens up so many different opportunities for something to go wrong. And we saw it right there a few laps ago with Huffines, as he has already caught back up to the back bumper of Bill Ross Jr., who in turn is still there with Chris White. So it's a 3-car battle now for that 5th position, as Huffines slides a little bit there in turn number 3 as he tries to get back going here to the back bumper once again of Bill Ross Jr. So like you mentioned, there's just so much more room for error in a road course race, and it just leaves it so wide open and so unpredictable that it's hard to really get a grip on what's going to happen, because there's so many different spots that something could go wrong.
Absolutely. By the way, Huffines does have the faster tires in this scenario right now. He just took the faster pair, but the drivers in front of him had pit around lap 22-ish, give or take, for their respective cycles for the 2-stopper. More trouble, though, for one of the Tidricks, the 45 around in the grass.
That's Daryl Tidrick in the 45, and he was one of those guys who I thought was going to have such a strong run, but he's already had to use his fast repair on the night, and just not the night that he wanted. So the No Fear Toyota definitely not having the night that Daryl Tidrick wanted. And he was one of those guys we talked about who had done a lot of road course racing leading up to this race. So no doubt he was looking for some better results than what he's getting tonight.
Dylan Huffines, meanwhile, tries to make the pass and does, able to get his way by Chris White on the 10-plus lap older tires. Remember, though, he's heated up the front ends, had to lock them up a couple times, and it's taken a lot of slides with those tires, so they have a lot of heat in them, and that can make it very dancy with this car, especially at a track where it's already antsy to get around the corners.
Yeah, such a technical racetrack here, Justin, as there's just so much going on this facility that it's so difficult to really settle into a groove, which ultimately you're going to have to. But really, the only way for you to settle into a groove is to try to get by yourself and just run some laps, because if you have someone in front of you, regardless whether it's a race for position or if it's a slower car or back a few laps, you're going to run into moments where it interrupts the flow of your lap. So really the only way to really settle into a groove is to try to get some clean air and just focus on you and yourself. And when you're in a battle, you just can't do that.
Indeed, as these drivers make their way around the racetrack right now, currently coming to about 20 laps to go for the Charlotte Roval 125, and what has been an entertaining one. The interesting thing in all of this, Jeff Stabnow on that one-stop strategy, he has not gained too much time. In fact, only gained 4/10 last time by, despite a bit fresher tires by about 8 laps or so. And in fact, has not really gained overall on that delta on the pylon.
Remember, though, he did have that spin there off the turn a few laps ago, so that did scuff up the tires a little bit. Not sure how much, but that did take a little bit of the life out of the tires, so I'm wondering if that is affecting how much he's able to close in on the 46.
Yeah, Breitzman still has to come down for a second time, remember that, but I'm curious what Sean Breitzman might be able to do, because he'll have the advantage, and mistakes like that might help him. That is a potential course cut penalty with the Turtles.
Yeah, right there through the front stretch chicane, and that was one of the areas that we talked about in the pre-race that a lot of drivers were going to struggle, and we talked about it was that second turn. It was the left-hander in the front stretch chicane that a lot of guys struggled with, because they carried so much speed through the right-hander that they either have to slam on the brakes and lose time or cut the course and lose time. Either way, the left-hander is definitely the more difficult of the two in the front stretch chicane, and we saw it by Stabnow right there.
Dan West Jr. into the pit lane. This will open up the leaders now for the 2-stop strategy on the night. Carl Burke had also came down for a scheduled pit stop for his second stop of the race. Also on the 2-stopper, Dylan Huffines, well, because of the faster pair. Meanwhile, bad news if you're a Seth Frazier fan. Yes, you are seeing that right. As he's left the car idling in the pits, it is blown up.
And Frazier, another guy who we talked about, ran quite a bit of road course racing, and he was
contact!
Accident.
Bill Ross Jr. gets hit in the back end by Dylan Huffines coming out of turn 7. What a save by Ross Jr. to make sure he didn't lose that car, but it looks like he'll give the spot to Huffines on the fresher tires.
Huffines just getting into the back of him there through that turn. Remember, Huffines is carrying so much more speed than Ross because of the fast repair, and just kind of ran out of racetrack there.
Yeah, that could have been much more worse. This is still 40 seconds back of Sean Breitzman at the moment, but give or take about 24 seconds behind the net leader once Breitzman comes down for his scheduled stop in Jeff Stabnow. 17 to go this upcoming time by for the leaders, by the way, and Stabnow has got himself back into a good rhythm where he's closed in all the time he's lost and an extra second on top of that.
So Stabnow is beginning to find that rhythm, which you mentioned, and that's a product of him not having any lap traffic to worry about. Just able to focus on him and him alone and try to get things going back into the rhythm that he was in the first half of this race, and it seems to be working for him right now.
Take a look at the track map meanwhile, and your thoughts on how this race has played out here tonight as these drivers get ready for the two-stop strategy to come into play. It has been actually a fairly interesting one for a road course race tonight for these series competitors.
It has been. It's really been a race of differing strategies and seeing who can execute it correctly and who can adapt when their strategy gets thrown off, as we've seen that a couple of times already. Drivers having to come in and use their fast repair, which threw them off of their strategy. Drivers like Dylan Huffines, John Ottenbacher came in for some damage and was able to make it through the rest of the run without using the fast repair until he pulled into pit road, but he did have quite a few issues early on. So this race to me has really been who can adapt when the strategy goes out the window the quickest, and it seems like the drivers have done a pretty good job of being able to adapt quickly, but we're still seeing the strategy unfold as we reach the second half of this race and close in more and more on that two-stop strategy.
More so the final third, but by the way, PJ Chidrick getting passed by Dan West Jr. on the fresh tires. Who has really impressed you tonight, who you didn't expect to have as well a performance as they have right now, especially since at the moment there are just 8 cars on the lead lap?
Well, we talked about him a little bit earlier. The guy who's really impressed me was Devin West in the 16 car, running in the 3rd position. Like we mentioned, a lot of us didn't even know he was a driver on the iRacing server. We knew who he was. We've seen him race and race with him time or two in the real world, but we didn't really know him on iRacing, let alone the fact that he was racing pavement, whereas in real life he races dirt. And here he is running 3rd in a road course race, and none of us knew how he was going to be able to handle a road course because we just didn't know how much experience he had. And here he is riding in 3rd position. The 16 car has really impressed me with this run, and just showing that Devin West might be able to make a run for some of his father's records that he's holding right now. Is probably one of the top guys in the series is Dan West Jr. Devin West showing that he can be just as competitive, if not more, than his father.
Would you believe it that before tonight, just 8 official races on a road course for Devin West as well?
And that just shows you just how talented this young man really is. 8 official starts on a road course, and here he is at one of the most difficult road courses on the server, and he's running in 3rd out of 30 cars right now in the closing stages of a race.
Does have to deal with a little bit of right side damage, but other than that, it's been pretty clean stint. Hasn't missed the backstretch chicane like what happened to him a couple times throughout this race tonight, but we'll have to see when he ducks down the pit lane. By the way, the drivers who are out of the race, 3 drivers did not take the start tonight, including Garrett Huffines, who had trouble in qualifying, Garrett Sisk, and Ray Fournier. But the drivers who are out of the race at the moment, Ricky Bozier, Boy Grande, Casey Tillman, Bruce Lee Weaver, Seth Frazier amongst them. But a replay as West Jr. had a little bit of a tricky spot. There was a lap car in front, but we'll see what happened to the 55. And as you take a look at the replay here, this is the 11 machine of Jennings that he had been trying to catch up to. This is approaching a tough situation, turn 5 and turn 6. And, well, you can call that the use of the chrome horn on the Roval, folks.
Just kind of saying, hey, pardon me, excuse me, I have a race to go try to win. I'm sitting in 7th position right now, trying to get back up there. So Dan West Jr. on some of the freshest tires out there right now, just showing that, hey, I'm trying to get up and gain as much time as I can on these guys who still have to pit. I'm trying to get myself in a position to capitalize here.
Indeed, and right now, he's back into open space now. Still, majority of the drivers on the two-stop strategy yet to come down to pit, including our leader, Sean Breitzman, still continuing to chug along now in 21 laps on his stint. Devin West right now on his 18th lap of the stint, this time by the stripe. The worst car on the two-stop strategy in terms of positioning is Dylan Huffines with a chance to come away with the top 2 at the moment. As you take a look at the side of your screen, and the last time some of these drivers have pit tonight.
Remember, though, Dylan Huffines was on the one-stop strategy. The only reason to change to the two-stop strategy is because he had to come in and use the fast repair after he pounded the wall a few laps ago. And he's done a great job of recovering. It might wind up working out for him. The fact that he was able to only lose a couple of spots when that happened, and already has gained 2 of them back and put himself in position that he can't make it the rest of the way, this might have worked out for Dylan Huffines in the end.
Timothy Ricketts Jr., meanwhile, just got lapped by Huffines as a little bit of a slide again for Huffines, but still trying to keep himself in decent shape for that race car to the checker flag for tonight. Still plenty of racing to go as these drivers get into a rhythm to get to the checker flag tonight at the Roval for one of the trickiest races of the campaign. And have to say, the lap traffic has been very cordial despite that bump and run we've seen with Jennings so far tonight.
Yeah, it's really been good to see, because lap traffic, we see it so many times, not just in the Northwest Series, but in just various series on iRacing and in the real world, where we've seen so many races get determined by lap traffic. So it's good to see the guys who are like, hey, I'm not going to be the reason that someone wins or loses a race. I'm just going to let these guys go and take off. And as a guy who earlier today in an official race had his day ruined by lap traffic, it's very good to see how the lap traffic is behaving out there today.
Where'd you finish in that race, by curiosity's sake?
It was at Talladega. It started 20th in the ARCA cars, the old K&N West cars, was running 6th, got it wrecked by a lapper, and wound up in the 10th position.
Still came home with the top 10, though.
Yeah, I was happy with it, but 2 laps down on a day, or on a run that could have been a top 5, it was definitely irritating.
Good news, though, these drivers don't have to go to Talladega until the fall when they go towards the postseason. By the way, it's the cutoff race before the playoffs at the end of September.
That's going to be interesting. We've seen it in NASCAR, the cutoff race being the Daytona 500. We were going to see it this year. Or not the Daytona 500, I'm sorry.
Oh, hard hit for Breitzman against the outside wall. Huge mistake for the race leader.
He has come to a stop. He's trying to get going. Casey Tillman spins out trying to get going. Oh boy, Sean Breitzman. And right after the pit entry, he's going to have to go an entire lap before he can get back to pit road. Jeff Stabnow has already gotten past him as he finally gets going. What happened there, Justin?
And we talked about the trouble of that final chicane. It happened in real life the first time the Roval was used. It happened here. Keep an eye on the right side tires with the curving. Just hooks them into the wall.
We talked about it, like you mentioned in the pre-race. That was one of the areas I was concerned about with trouble spots, as we mentioned. The front stretch chicane, if you carry too much speed through there, it can bite you, and we just saw it right there. The race leader, Sean Breitzman, we were waiting to see when he was going to have to make his pit stop. I think this is just forced his hand. Now I think he's got it this time. Trouble
for Gary Nichols, meanwhile, on the other side of the wall you just seen in Tum Tum Burn turn. Gary Nichols said hello to that wall, is finally back going in 18th. He's been quietly keeping himself chugging along the racetrack. There is an incident limit, by the way, that these drivers are trying to make sure they don't reach. If they get to 20 incident points tonight, they end up having to serve a drive-through penalty. Then every 4X, then 28 is a disqualification for a couple drivers with some of the troubles. They might be in range for some of those penalties tonight, as you see on the screen.
We'll see how it goes. One thing I just want to point out right now, Sean Brightsman did not pit this time. He is still trying to go as far as he can. So Sean Brightsman, the two-stop strategy, he still has yet to pit.
We talked about the max you can go on fuel. There is a chance he could save and try and come away with a second place finish here, but it's a gamble. The farthest anyone has gone tonight, remember, is 32 laps on a stint.
So you mentioned that. What lap did he pit, and does that fall into the 32 lap bracket?
Right now, based on the math, and remember, he's on his 24th lap on this stint, and there is coming to 10 laps to go. Do the math. Realistically, you may be out of that window, but he's also dealing with that front end crushed in now, potential motor damage. That could be a huge problem now.
So Brightsman, I think at this point, is just going for broke and trying to salvage as much as he can with this 46 car, but I'm not so sure that I would do that if I was in his position. I would pull in. You still got the fast repair. Just pull in and... Or no, I'm sorry, you don't have the fast repair anymore if you're Brightsman, because I believe he used it after the first damage. So the fast repair is gone. Maybe that's why he hasn't pit yet. He knows he doesn't have the fast repair, so he might just be going and trying to salvage it here.
And if he comes down to the pit lane, hard hit for Brightsman, a second time to the safer barrier. This time, no front nose, my goodness.
O'Hare caught the turtle of the chicane, which bit Brightsman a couple of laps ago, and just sent Brightsman in the wall. And if the previous one didn't end it, that's definitely going to end it for Brightsman.
O'Hare now running through the artificial turf. What in the world, though, have to say, O'Hare was getting the run because he had better engine conditions, but he was 5-6 car lengths back on entry.
Just sending it in, and got right into Brightsman, and Brightsman now with a lot of front end damage. The nose is missing. The number 46 modified right now is in a lot of trouble, Justin.
So there goes the chances to try and stretch it for a top two. Now it's the hopes of trying to get to the end with the best result possible. O'Hare, meanwhile, has gone around a second time in turn number 6. That's been a trouble spot for him, and now he's a modified. So 2 more modifieds to add to the grid tonight.
Well, the shakeup on the top is now we got Devin West in the second spot, 8 seconds back of Jeff Stabnow in the number 24. Devin West in the 16, now moving into the second spot. Dylan Huffines will be third once this is all said and done, once they get back to the line. So now this turns into West trying to reel in Jeff Stabnow. Remember, Stabnow is on the one-stop strategy. I believe Devin West may be on the two-stop strategy. I can't remember if he has come in for a second stop yet or not.
He's about 23 laps on his current stint, nearly bobbing his way to the inside wall. That's been a trouble spot for drivers tonight. Here's the thing, though. He's going to have to hope for some mistakes from Stabnow that have happened this stint, Greg. Remember, he's had a couple spins, a couple bobbles, but he still has a 10.6 second lead now.
So Devin West, we talked about it. You do the math on the fuel run. He looks to be about a lap to the good on making it. So if he can continue to save, he might be in good position, and just hope that Stabnow makes a couple more mistakes through the course of the day. So believe Devin West can.
Oh, there's one there. Big time lockup across the curving goes Stabnow. That's another couple seconds lost for the leader.
So West gonna gain a little bit of ground there. So now this turns into just keep your eyes on the 24 and see if he can keep it clean the rest of the way.
Gap is now down to 8.8 seconds. Nearly locked up the right front again. Something that's just seemed to have fallen apart this stint for Stabnow. This is now his third major mistake in the past 20 laps or so. Hits the curving that time and nearly hits the wall.
Well, talking from a driver's perspective, and one thing I've noticed with myself, I'm not saying this is what's going on, but this is something I've noticed with myself. Once you make that first big mistake, sometimes it's hard to get that out of your head, and you're too worried on trying to make up for that. You wind up making another mistake later on down the road. Perhaps that might be what's going on with Stabnow. He was so solid the first race, but once you make that first mistake, it just beats you around in your head, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're making another mistake. And with Stabnow, you're back in a position now in the race lead where all you got to do is stay clean and you've got it, but it may or may not happen here through the course of the race. If he can settle things down, he can be good, but I wonder if those earlier mistakes are starting to weigh more and more on the head of Stabnow as we get closer and closer to the finish.
Remember, the top 3 right now on the board are all rookies in road class. As this is a road course race, it will show up as the road course classification for the license. As you can see, the highest running A license is Brightsman, followed by Paulison. Majority of the top half of the field are B or lower.
So that just shows the road course experience factor that we have here, and it's showing that it's not really meaning that as much as we thought it would, with the top 3 being rookies. This is an impressive showing from the likes of Stabnow, West, and Huffines.
Here's the thing, though, with the gap now closing an extra few tenths of a second that time by for Devin West, and the mistakes we've seen from Stabnow, what would you tell him at this point? He is right now in communications with a couple other drivers, for example.
If I'm on the box of the 24, I'm telling him to just take a deep breath, settle down, run your race. And that's the part I'm stressing the most, is run your race, hit your marks. Just focus on clicking off laps like you were doing in the first half. Just settle things down. Don't let the mistakes mess you up. Don't overthink what you're doing right now. Just settle down, run your race, and try to close this one out.
Gaining there 0.3 of a second through Sector 2 that time by. Can Devin West, though, handle the demons of this backstretch chicane another 6 or 7 times? 6 to go this time by. Needs to find some miracles. The gap, 7.4 seconds in the final few miles of this race.
See how it all unfolds. Jeff Stabnow coming to the front stretch chicane, crossing the strike. Just the final stages of this race now, and Stabnow just trying to keep it clean the rest of the way. Devin West, he's looking at that playbook for a Hail Mary right now. Try to reel in as much as he can and hope and pray that something else happens in front of him.
Stabnow actually had lost 0.3 of a second last time by. Mind you, this is all while West has older tires by 4 total laps based on their pit stop times. They also have Dylan Huffines, who is 14 seconds back, who is the fastest car on the track.
Dylan Huffines, remember, he might be on the freshest tires out of anyone up at the front because of that fast repair. And yeah, he does, because he was on the one-stop strategy with Jeff Stabnow, made it one further lap than Stabnow on that first run, but had to pit to use that fast repair, so receive the advantage of the fresher tires right now.
Remember, even with him coming down to use just the fast repair and get another splash of fuel, he was one of the drivers who stretched it fairly decently for their pit stop deltas and their pit stop laps, but now all of that has worked out for a potential top 3 finish and a chance to talk to him in the post-race coverage tonight. Still coming to 5 laps to go this time by. It's going to be curious to see what the Walsburg Co. machine can do. Nearly spun around trying to get up to the gears this time of the stripe.
So Stabnow needs to just settle down and focus not on the mirror and trying to keep the distance. He has to just settle down, focus on what he's doing, not worry about anybody else but him right now. As he's coming up now on some lap traffic, 3 cars now in the windshield of the 24. So we'll see how he's able to negotiate this traffic.
Keep in mind, they also have a 4th just up the road as well, and Frank Harris, who has been letting people go in bunches, so very cordial in that case. But Steve Jennings in the other 11 car, the 11J specifically, got a bump and run about 15 laps ago from Dan West Jr. when he didn't let him go in Sector 2. We'll have to see if Stabnow shows the patience this time to wait for the right moments, gains a ton of time in the backstretch chicane, hits the curbing though again, nearly hooked it into the safer barrier.
Close call there for Stabnow in the 24, trying to get going on the inside of, I believe this is Jennings, to his inside. We'll see how he's able to negotiate the front stretch chicane this time. Remember, he did have a miss up here early, gets through that time, so Stabnow able to recover. Nice job by Stabnow, but I believe West is going to be able to close in even more.
And you're at the end of the tire life at this point too as drivers, because the fall off has now gone in upwards of 4 seconds for Stabnow. Lost another second that time by 3.5 seconds on a clean lap. So West needing still that mistake to happen if he has any chance, but you have to say it's been a clean race for these drivers throughout tonight who are up at the top of the board amongst that lead lap grouping.
It has been. It's been a very clean race for these guys up at the front. Yes, there is some guys with damage, such as Brightsman, but overall, it's been a very, very good race for these guys up front, keeping the mistakes to a minimum, and that's what we had to do. That's what we talked about in the pre-race. You had to keep your mistakes to a minimum, and how you were able to recover from them. And these guys up at the front have been the ones who have been able to recover very well from these mistakes that they've made. I don't think anybody has been able to keep it completely clean so far today as far as incident count goes, but the guys who are up front are the ones that are keeping that number to a minimum, and they're able to respond and keep it going.
By the way, Bill Ross Jr. is the car in front who did make the pass this time by. However, Breisman still needs to hold on for about 9 seconds worth of gap for the next 3 laps to hold on to a top 5 finishing position. He's about 3 seconds a lap off the pace because of the engine damage and the bodywork damage.
So that's just showing the damage that is done to these cars as the race is worn on. So closing stages of this one, Stabnow in lap traffic though. This is allowing Devin West to creep up more and more. It's down to 5.9 seconds. Justin, do you think he has enough time if something were to go wrong with the 24, or does he need maybe 1 or 2 more mistakes to really get up and make this interesting?
I think it comes down to the type of mistake. Stabnow this time, though, does get the space for BJ Tidrick. That puts now 8 cars on the lead lap. Meanwhile, as these drivers make their way towards the backstretch chicane, Chris Wright, though, made mistakes to drop himself to 7th, moved Dan West Jr. up to 6th after the 83 had trouble in the Tums Heartburn turn.
And Dan West Jr., he was another one we talked about who had a mistake in the early going when he launched like a rocket on the backstretch chicane, and we were worried about the damage that may have inflicted to the 55 car. He's done a good job keeping it competitive, but we were worried early on that may have messed up the suspension. And honestly, the 55 car never really was the same after that incident, Justin. So yes, it did do quite a number on the 55, but ultimately Dan West Jr. did a great job keeping it intact as he has moved now into the 6th position in the 55 car. Great job for Dan West Jr. here as this race is worn on, especially with the suspension damage after hitting the chicane.
Indeed, and remember, his son is still in 2nd position. Only gained about a 10th last time by. So he might need a miracle for anything to happen as Stabnow gets to about a lap and a half to go. Still has a bit of traffic ahead, including Casey Tillman and 8th place Stephen Paulison. Then it's clear sailing for the 24.
For Jeff Stabnow, you just got to worry about 1 more car, perhaps, and then try to make your way around for the final turn. Honestly, if you're Stabnow, how much would you encourage passing the lap car, or would you just encourage kind of just riding it out? You have a 5.7 second lead. You're coming to the white flag. If you're Jeff Stabnow, would you pass the 58 car, or would you just kind of hang back and focus more on keeping it clean this last lap and taking 0 chances?
Well, based on the fact that Paulison is 8 seconds back in the next position, it might be up to Paulison, depending on what Stabnow does, but the white flag is out. Final lap from the Charlotte Roval, 2.28 miles to go.
through turn 1 into the Tums Heartburn turn. Stabnow gets through the first 2 turns good, and this is what he has to do. He just has to settle things down and hit his marks one more time.
Sector 2 once again, and already communicating with the lap car ahead. Looks like there might be something going on with the 58 when it reaches them, already making sure of what happens, what if that ends up happening on this final lap. But for Stabnow, the overall series history leader in overall starts, just a half a lap away, Greg, from his 31st victory in Northwest Racing Series history.
And what a moment it would be for a driver who says he's not very good at road course racing to put on a performance like this and just add another win to the road course total that he has. For someone who's not a road course driver, as he says, he has had quite a bit of success on the road courses.
Indeed, and tonight, a dominating one for Jeff Stabnow. Fastest in practice, fastest in qualifying, led a majority of the laps tonight. Through the final corner, Jeff Stabnow wins his 2nd race of the season. He's the victor at the Roval.
Outstanding effort by Jeff Stabnow. Recovers from a couple of mistakes and holds on for a very solid win. Devin West, what a great job by him to finish 2nd. And Dylan Huffines able to shake off the hit to the wall and having to use the fast repair and throw him off the strategy to round out the podium.
Sean Brightsman, one of the final cars on the lead lap to come across the stripe. Paulison does keep his lead lap. Sean Brightsman should note, coming across the stripe at the other end of the speedway in the top 5 with Bill Ross Jr. in the 4th position. What a performance tonight, though. The one stopper usually is a risky strategy, but he played it to perfection tonight. Was one of the quickest cars all evening, and even when the pressure started building, the mistakes started happening, he kept his composure at the right moment at the right time, Greg.
To finish in the top 5 after having 2 incidents in the same area on not back-to-back laps, but a couple laps in between, one of them involving another car and damaging your car to the point that you were driving a modified out here on the Roval. What a job by Sean Brightsman to keep his cool and still hang on for a top 5. That shows why Sean Brightsman is one of the top drivers in the series right there.
Mind you too, Greg, just the 3rd driver tonight. Now after this race, to be a multi-time winner this season, there have been a lot of different winners. Stabnow just the 3rd driver to have 2 of them now.
Stabnow joining Brightsman and Frazier as the 2-time winners in this series, and he is lighting it up here on the front stretch here at Charlotte. A very happy man in the Walls Beer Co. Chevrolet, his 2nd win of the season and the 1st win on the road course of the year for any driver in the Northwest Series. Jeff Stabnow opens the road course bank account with a win.
An absolute clinic tonight for the veteran. Let's take a look at your unofficial race results as Stabnow comes home with the victory by 6.654 seconds at the Charlotte Roval. Yeah, overall, he finished with 37 laps led, the most by anyone this race. Devin West led 2 and finished in 2nd. Dylan Huffines rounds out the top 3, all 3 drivers with rookie class Roval safety licenses. Heck of a performance for those drivers. Bill Ross Jr., Sean Brightsman round out the top 5, with Dan West Jr. coming home in 6th. Chris White comes home in 7th. Paulison, the last car in the lead lap, in 8th. BJ Tidrick comes home quietly in 9th. And Sean Annenbacher recovered from his damage to come home with the top 10, Greg.
Carl Burke, first car outside the top 10 in the 11th spot, 1 lap down. Timothy Ricketts Jr., right behind him in 12th. Tyler King, 13th, after having some damage earlier on. Steve Jennings and Daryl Tidrick rounding out the top 15, 2 laps down. Also with them, David Kaufman and Stephen O'Hare on that lap, with Gary Nichols 3 laps down, Frank Harris 7 laps down, and rounding out the top 20 is Scott Hutchinson, who finished 11 laps down.
Casey Tillman comes home 21st, 24 laps down, still came to the checkered flag. Caden Anderson, though, 22nd, a rough race for him at one point, put it towards the garage area. Corey Walters finished 30 laps down in 23rd, Ricky Bozer in 24th. Roy Grande was looking in good shape in 25th, though, is where he finishes after a hit to the inside wall off turn number 1. 21. Bruce Lee Weaver parked it in 26. Seth Frazier, the last car running tonight, parked it at lap 14. Tried to get damage repair done, kept the car running, blew up while idling. The rest of the drivers did not start in Garrett Sisk, Ray Fournier, and Garrett Huffines for tonight's action for the Northwest Cup Series from the Charlotte Roval. We'll take a step aside. When we come back, we'll have your Clan Wars post-race show. You're watching LSR TV, your home for sim racing.
They say everything is bigger. These guys down in Texas aren't messing around. This feature race will separate the boys from the men, the girls from the ladies. Can you handle racing 300 laps for $25,000? It's not as easy as you think. We don't stop to tow those too weak. We just push them out of the way. We don't run 20 laps. We run 300 each night. We don't care about what you and your boys have under the hood. Bring all you got. Don't be scared. Call my Cowboy Jack today to get signed up. It all goes down on October 2nd and 3rd in Mesquite, Texas, just outside of Dallas. Kenny Wallace is coming back this year to try again. You don't have excuses. Go to LoneStar600.com now.
Welcome back to LSR TV for tonight's coverage of the Northwest Cup Series for the Charlotte Roval 125. It's the Clan Wars post-race show, the official communication partner of LSR TV. Our top three is all set and standing by. Justin Prince, Greg Rents, and Charles Wood in the broadcast booth with you. First things first, let's talk to our third place finisher who had a wild race tonight. Had to come down for a second pit stop to take a fast repair. It's Dylan Huffines. Dylan, how does it feel to be one of the three drivers in the top three to finish with a rookie license on the road courses?
It's definitely pretty awesome. I don't normally do very well on road courses, and I don't really race them a whole lot, as you can tell by the rookie rating. I just kind of try to keep my nose clean the whole time and not screw myself over by going off track or hitting anything too bad.
What was some of the difficulties of trying to get used to driving to this road course and trying to make sure you didn't make major mistakes, because this is probably the trickiest one on the stock car circuit in 2020?
Oh yeah, it's definitely one of the toughest road course tracks I've raced at. It's really hard to try to keep the car under you, because if you drive it in too deep, the car gets too loose and you slide in the corner. If you try driving it out too hard, the car gets loose and you might end up in a wall or in the grass or something. Kind of just have to find that balance to keep the car happy and keep the tires under you for the whole race.
Overall, though, how would you describe your experience in this type of a race like this, especially trying to recover from having to come down a second time for that fast repair?
It was a pretty good experience. I definitely learned a whole lot tonight, and ready to conquer the next road course race, hopefully, wherever that may be.
Next road course race isn't all the way until Canadian Tire Motorsport Park on July 27th, but the next race for the series is at Kansas. Your thoughts on going back to the mile and a half for Kansas?
I don't know if I'll be able to make that one or not. I don't have that track yet, but I'll definitely have to look into getting it, seeing how well I finished tonight and at Atlanta.
Definitely get on that is the best message I can say, but anyone you want to thank before you let you go?
I'll thank Northwest Race Support, the Northwest Racing Boys, Travis Barnes for spotting for me, since he's unfortunately unable to race right now. He's been helping me out a whole lot with getting to drive the car better and just everything, and my parents and Vincent Enterprises, and that's about it.
Thank you very much for the time. Congratulations on the top 3 tonight.
Thank you.
Dylan Huffline's coming home third tonight. Second place is standing by with Greg Rentz. It's Devin West who led 2 laps tonight.
And Devin, what a run for you. Second place, and believe we mentioned it on the broadcast, you have 8 official road course starts, so not a whole lot of road course racing experience for you, but to come home in second, that's got to feel great.
Yeah, it feels pretty good. I think those 8 road course starts probably finished in one of them. So to finish this one at 55 laps is awesome. Yeah, I led 2 laps. That's news to me. So yeah, overall it's a pretty good day.
Yeah, 2 laps led. And talk a little bit about the backstretch chicane there, because we were keeping track. You had a couple of little run-ins with it there. So tell us about your battle with that as the race wore on.
I'd say out of all the chicanes on the track, that's probably the most difficult one, just because trying to come down from 4th to 3rd to 2nd and make that chicane, and then get back across the bumps and get going straight on the gas is definitely super difficult. So I was kind of playing around the whole night, trying to figure out if I wanted to stay in 3rd, hit the chip a little bit going down into that chicane, or try and go up to 4th, try to get a little more speed. But yeah, just a tough chicane. I think I only missed it a few times, which I'm happy about. Could be a lot worse. So.
Well, we mentioned it on the broadcast, and we were very impressed with how you were able to keep your composure after those mess-ups with the chicane and able to rally back into a second place. And you were reeling in Jeff Stabnow as the race wore on there near the end. Stabnow was able to settle it back down near the end there, but we were keeping track. You were closing in, so you were running very, very competitive times with Jeff as the race wore on. So how did that feel there late in the going? Were you trying to reel him in at all costs, or were you just focusing on hitting your marks and trying to protect the second spot?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, sometimes the best defense is the best offense. So I think when I hit my marks, just stay smooth, it's kind of what was sort of getting me to Jeff. I think Jeff's probably saving a little bit. So I think I had to remind myself as I was looking down at the time, seeing I was closing a little bit. I'd keep reminding myself that the reason I'm gaining a little bit is because I'm staying smooth, staying just careful. So, and the last thing I want to do is throw away a good second place finish and overshoot a corner. So.
All right, well, second place finish. You're back here on Thursday with the Truck Series. But next up for the Cup Series, we go to Kansas. What are your thoughts on the big mile-and-a-half oval?
I'm excited for Kansas. I think definitely going back to mile and a half, and that's probably what I'm best at out of any track on the circuit. So looking forward to that. So it's a fun, slick, rough track. So should be a lot of good racing.
His Lone Northwest Series win in his rookie campaign came at Homestead in the Truck Series. That is a mile-and-a-half oval. We'll let you go celebrate a second place, Devin, but first, we know you got some shout-outs who you want to thank.
Yeah, first of all, just thank you guys, SRTV, for putting on the show, for everyone at home to go watch, and for everyone else to go watch. And also just sort of thank the series, thank Jeff, Sean, for putting on a great race, and also running a great race. These guys are pretty fascinating. So, and also thank you, my dad, for just constantly been there and practicing, helping me along. So, yeah.
All right, Devin West, second place tonight here at the Roval. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And Justin Prince, I believe, has made his way down the victory lane where he is caught up with our race winner, Jeff Stabnow.
Launch the fireworks because Jeff Stabnow won his second race of the season, third multi-race winner of the campaign in dominating fashion. Jeff, 37 laps led, one of the fastest cars the entire night in practice, in qualifying, and in race trim. How does it feel to put on a clinic and a class at the Roval?
Oh man, it feels awesome. I've never been short at speed on these road courses, but I've never been able to string laps together without too many mistakes never been able to string enough good laps together to compete for a win, really. So it feels pretty awesome, even though I shot myself in the foot pretty bad there, was able to still come out with a win, so I'm pretty excited.
What was going through your mind as that was happening and the mistakes started to build up a little bit, and the gap that was as high as 15 or so seconds shrunk down to 5 or so seconds at one point in the final stage of the race?
That was pretty devastating. I've got a history of big mistakes on road courses, and so, the first thing was here we go again, and I let it get in my head for a while. I really did, and then it kind of took me a while. I didn't do the tires any favors with that either, but it cost me a little over 10 seconds there, and it got in my head for too long. Thank God we had a fantastic first field run on that car and built that lead. I was able to survive my own head, but eventually got it together and was able to start stringing enough laps together to fend these guys off. Not sure what happened to Sean there. I'm going to have to watch the replay. I thought I was done for after I spun it. I didn't think I was going to be able to catch him. And I thought I blew my chance there. And then, I don't know, he got in a wreck or some sort of mishap. And then he comes right out behind me, and then he's gone again. So not real sure what happened there. I thought we were going to have a dogfight to the end.
Yeah, it was interesting seeing him trying to stretch it on the field to make sure he can get to the end on a one-stopper, an early one-stopper, mind you. But next race on the calendar is at Kansas. Your thoughts on that track?
I like the mile and a half. Kansas Baby's not my favorite one. It's such a single groove track. I love running a wall, but that single groove makes it so tough to pass. It should be an interesting race. Dan West, probably of all the mile and a halves last year, that was his best track. I ended up getting a win there in the fixed series, but it was only because he kind of got turned a little bit on one of the green-white checker restarts. I think he dominated that race, so we're going to put some work in if we're going to compete with Dan and probably Devin there at that track this week.
Interesting to see what happens at that racetrack. But is there anyone you want to thank for being a part of your second victory of the season and your 31st victory in Northwest Racing Series competition?
Well, obviously got to thank the buddies there in TeamSpeak for surviving the mini meltdown that I had there when I thought I gave the race away. Big shout out to Dan West. He and I turned a lot of laps together this week. Neither one of us are big road course fans, so we kind of just teamed up this week and really pushed each other to put the laps in. And I wouldn't have had near the practice laps in if it weren't for Dan. I don't know that we did a lot of long runs. We mainly ended up having hot lap competitions, but we turned laps nonetheless. So big shout out to Dan. Big thanks to him. Wouldn't be here without his help. And then the sponsors, Walls Beard Co., series sponsors the car, LSR TV, just the fantastic partnership we have with you guys and the amazing job that you guys do and all the hard work you put into this. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you very much for the time, Jeff. Congratulations on the victory tonight.
Thank you, sir.
That was Jeff Stabnow coming away with the victory by 6.654 seconds. First things first, Greg, your thoughts on what was an entertaining race at the Roval. The fans were definitely enjoying it throughout the evening, it seemed, whether it was in the virtual stands or whether it was watching along on LSR TV. It was a fun one up in the booth as well.
Yeah, I was having a blast watching this race unfold through the course of the race, and race just took so many twists and turns with so many different things you had to watch, so many different variables at play. It was fun to be able to watch it all develop and see how it was all going to unfold and trying to predict what the next move was going to be, and ultimately seeing how Stabnow and West were handling those closing stages and trying to get themselves in position to be there at the end. It was great to watch it all unfold, and I'm excited to be back here doing it again on Thursday.
Indeed, especially since that's going to be open setup for those trucks. And remember, Road to Pro is getting ready to go there as well. But the next time the Cup Series is on the calendar, it's at Kansas. Your thoughts on what we should see at Kansas back on the mile and a halves?
We're back on the mile and a half, and remember, Sean Breitzman has 2 wins on the mile and a half tracks. We talked to Devin West, the win in the Truck Series on the mile and a half. Stan West Jr., a win on the mile and a half this year. So this race is going to be wide open to see how it comes down, and we'll see if the guys who have been dominant on the mile and a halves are able to keep it going, or if someone else is able to get up there and put themselves back in the mix.
Going to be curious to see what happens, but it's time to say goodbye. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in for tonight's coverage of the Charlotte Roval 125 and staying around for the Clan Wars post-race show. I'd like to thank Dylan Huffines, Devin West, and Jeff Stabnow for joining us for a post-race coverage. I'd like to also thank our producer, Charles Wooden, for producing tonight's action and twisting and tweaking the dials for what was an enjoyable race. Next time we'll see you on the track is at Kansas Speedway for what should be some exciting action back on the mile and a halves for the Cup Series. You can see that at 11:10 p.m. Eastern Time, 8:10 p.m. Pacific. But for my podcast partner, Greg Rentz, I'm Justin Prince saying so long. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. We'll see you when the Truck Series comes here on Thursday.
This broadcast is the copyrighted work of LSR-TV and may not be rebroadcast, retranslated, or used in any form without the express written consent of 52 Media LLC and iRacing.com Motorsports Simulations. LSR-TV would like to thank you for your support, and we hope you enjoyed tonight's broadcast.